restrictions, including the ability to be monitored, and were paid or compensated for participation. Do you see what it's really about? Then it's a person's choice. It's a completely different issue. When it is required, or if a person of diminished capacity accepts it without understanding what he or she is doing. When this is the case, a person is used. The current presentation of this program shows it to be mandatory rather than choice. To give anybody the heebie-jeebies yet? This is an amazing story. How does one argue that the compulsory implanting of a radio chip under a person's skin is just? Sold to the American public as a necessary tool of public good, one cannot help but reflect on the common saying, again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Abject poverty becomes a societal sin, giving license to the government to monitor your every move. Poverty becomes the sole justification for electronic imprisonment. This is a deprivation of liberty. Ladies and gentlemen, do you understand now about debtors' prisons coming back? I got to tell you something. They will monitor these guys. There will be a database, and guess what? If Joe Rich Guy needs a kidney, they whack Pete Poor Guy. Or it even goes beyond that. Who knows? Maybe they've got some new tasty substance on the line that makes Soylent Green look like an hors d'oeuvre, and the entree is yet to be presented. Soylent Green, by the way, was a movie with Charlton Heston and Edward G. Robinson about dead people after a war that were turned into a food substance. By the way, there are people already proposing that. Your thoughts? Well, listen, I'll let you have a minute to catch your breath. I need to go get some more water, because I'm talking myself dry. You're listening to Q-Files, and by the way, we're trying to get the ISDN line, but guess what? Those two-legged gremlins out there in hellhole land have screwed up my line pretty effectively. Congratulations, devils. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back after the break. You listen to the Q-Files. Stay tuned.
Through the years of providing water filters to America, you've come to us and we've listened. You asked us to make the water level visible to eliminate the guesswork when refilling the water. We listened. You asked for an elevated base so the system could be used in places beside on the edge of the counter. We listened. You asked us to develop a filter that was made in the USA. We listened. You asked us to include an emergency light for camping and during power outages. We listened. After 9/11, you asked us to develop a filter that was more powerful in removing chemical agents. Again, we listened. Introducing the Berkey Light, the gravity filter requested by America, designed by Americans, and made in America. Get the Berkey Light, the American water filter, for only $259 by calling New Millennium at 888-803-4438. That's toll-free, 888-803-4438. Not yet available in Iowa.
This is the Reality Radio Network on Telstar 5 Transponder 5 and on the internet at realityradionetwork.com.
Hi, I'm Steve Quayle from Renaissance Precious Metals. Gold has been mankind's obsession since the dawn of civilization. Used as money in China over 3,000 years ago, gold was first coined by the Romans in 50 BC. America's first gold coins, the original eagles, were produced by the 3-year-old United States Mint in 1795. When you invest in gold, choose the bullion coins that feature the very symbol of our nation's freedom, the American eagle. Choose a...
Share this with you. You know, when we start talking about nuclear weapons effects, and I've had shows where I've dealt with electromagnetic pulse, a lot of the newer cars aren't going to run. I can't think of anything better to hightail it out of or to give the United Nations troops a taste of muscle power than some of the older cars that don't have all the electronics. Now, Nancy sent me a neat email. Thank you, Nancy. And she said they've already discovered what's going on. And again, I think I'm on the right track here. She said, Steve, we sell a lot of parts for the old muscle cars, not show cars, but drivers. That's what I'm talking about. A lot of Chevy and 442 parts. Those are Oldsmobile 442s. It has been very steady. Since we started in January, most of our parts are going for our reserve. They're already discovering it. And this is Nancy in Arizona. By the way, for those of you that are going to be in the mountains, you can go on eBay. They're not always available. And look at the Unimog. Unimog are the old war horses, literally. They're made by Mercedes-Benz. And you can pick up driving functional Unimogs. And the Unimog has got, 18, 24, 36 inches of clearance, depending on the model. They only go about 55, but to say they'll go over anything, through anything, and up anything is an understatement. So there are vehicles out there, everyone, that you can get tremendous deals on. Now, I remember my the first time I came into the Oldsmobile 442, and I know this is going to sound like reminiscing, but I can remember a specific model, and forgive me, Nancy and others, I don't. All I know is it came with a Hurst T-handled shifter, and it had twin exhausts, and that sucker hauled. As a matter of fact, I was road racing up one time to West Yellowstone from Bozeman. You know, it's a treacherous road, and to make a long story short, it's got a lot of curves in it and stuff. And I was going with one of the wildest guys I think that's ever driven a car. I'll just tell you his first name, Greg. His dad used to own a car dealership in Bozeman, and for fun, he'd take out a brand new, in those days, whatever it was, Cadillac Eldorado, and stack it up. Well, to make a long story short, I was in a 442 that blew up at about 139 miles an hour. You know, the clutch blew, everything blew. It was great, but there was smoke and everything, and I rolled down the window, put my foot on the shifter because I figured everything was going to come up through the floor and I was going to be toast. But to make a long story short, there are some fabulous old cars out there, and there are some screaming deals. Now, some of you with a little bit of capital might want to talk to some of the guys who are good mechanics and stuff, and I got a lot of tremendously talented listeners out there, and start putting together what I would call urban reality vehicles. And look, just because they have horsepower doesn't mean they don't get good gas mileage, but remember this. When everything else won't drive and everybody else is stuck on the freeway in their electronic cars, the point is it might be really interesting to have something that, let's say this can still go 0 to 60 in under 5.5 seconds and have a top speed if you needed it. Now, look, I'm not saying anybody go out and break the speed limit rules right now, but there are places where you can learn to drive fast and you can learn to drive safely, and the best thing I can tell you is that there are a lot of practical steps to take, and you can go to schools to learn how to drive fast if you want to. But in the meantime, the only vehicles that are going to run you guys are vehicles without any type of computers. And don't kid yourself. The technology exists to shut down any car with the exception of the specific cars. And again, there are disagreements on the years, but I can just tell you this. Anything that doesn't have any electronics per se is your best bet. You can still have an electronic ignition, but the thing you want to basically watch out for is anything that has any computers whatsoever. Because at some point, you can bet your bottom dollar, just like OnStar and some of the satellite tracking systems and navigation and early warning and all that crap, all somebody's got to do is flip a switch, and if they can open your car door from space, they can certainly shut you down. Now, again, I want to share this. This RFID thing is getting me, that's my statement on muscle cars. And by the way, if any of you are interested in that, Nancy, if you want to send me your phone number or email, I'll give it out. If you're selling cars, or if you're just selling parts, or if you're selling just parts, can you send me the name of a dealer that people can deal with that you know that's reputable, or somebody that might sell muscle cars? And I'm not talking about show cars. I'm talking about drivers. So let me know that, and I'll let people know on the radio where they can go. Now, listen, ladies and gentlemen, here's what Bill said about my RFID story. It's a testing ground, Steve, to work out the bugs. When they go full force, there can't be any screw-ups. Bill, well, I think that's part of it, but I think there's more to it than that, okay, a lot more. Subdermal implants on any section of our society makes me very uneasy. This is a bad trend. Well, not only is it a bad trend, it's control, it's control, it's control. I think if any point I made the other night on the roundtable with George Norrie, Alex Jones, Linda Moulton Howe, and Jim Mars, is you can absolutely talk about the word that's control. And when you talk about it, it's there. Let me read to you what Chuck has to say. This is kind of interesting. He said, Steve, the government has been saying that the price of gasoline will go down the next few weeks. Now, thank you, Chuck. This is obvious, but no one ever thinks of it, including me right now. When have you ever seen the price of gas go down in the summer? Excuse me? You don't think what would you say, the economic vampires are going to lower their gas for your trip? They know you're going to use more gas this summer because most people use the summer to refuel for the next year, meaning I'm talking their energy, get a vacation, whatever. And so Chuck brings up the point. When have you ever seen the price of gas go down in the summer? He said the price of energy affects the cost of goods just as a coat of paint affects a house. Great statement. The paint, while a thin coat causes a great difference in the house, energy costs transfer directly to the price of goods, all goods. Who are we kidding? No one. He said gas prices here are fairly stable in Virginia. He said about $1.62 to $1.71. Diesel is $1.55 to $1.59 at the truck stops, and $1.69 to $1.71 at urban gas stations. Speaking of cars, you mentioned calling your speaking of cars, you mentioned calling your VW dealer. Suggest you look at what I have, the VW Jetta TDI, Thomas David Indian powered diesel Jetta, which gets 49 to 55 miles per gallon in a 5-speed manual. He says, "God bless you," and you know that's a great what do you say? Start. Listen to this. This is what Nancy said to me. She said, "Steve, the homeless are the only people that can't really be tracked. All the rest of us are stable and can be tracked by where we live, spend, etc." Interesting. So the point is that, let me even go one step further for you. Do you think that somebody may want to have access to the homeless people? What would you do, let's say, and God bless every veteran out there that's homeless. My prayer has been that they'll be reintegrated into society, but do you realize someone could be very effective in starting a guerrilla movement in this country if they were to recruit the homeless men who are capable of fighting because they don't exist and they're not important? And I think that's one of the real reasons behind this. And again, I'm sorry, people, but there are just too many bad apples out there spoiling the apple barrel, and you've got to think beyond the obvious. It's not just a test market, which, you know, of a new ID. Listen, if they can track Cadillacs and anybody else, General Motors, OnStar, and whoever's got their other, you know, satellite tracking capability, believe me, they don't need to perfect it. What they're worried about is two things. Number one, they do want and forgive me, I'm not saying homeless people are lab rats, but that's what they're treating them as. And I can share this with you that again, this is one of the sins of Sodom, which ultimately brought the destruction of Sodom. Wasn't just, quote, their sodomy. It was the fact of how the Sodomites dealt with the poor and the helpless. There is a time when God in heaven basically weighs a country or a civilization's worth, or lack of it in this case, by how we treat the poor and the disabled and the widows and the orphans. And ladies and gentlemen, I just would encourage you. By the way, I want you to pray for one of our listeners today. Her name is Charmaine, and she called me today, and God bless her. She had a handyman steal a bunch of her metals, someone that has worked in her home. She can't afford to lose it. And would you just pray that that thief will be found out and she'll get her metals back? Just that literally God would move into the situation. I mean, again, she's an elderly lady. She's a single, and the bottom line is that she got taken advantage of. Now, let me give you this word of caution, word to the wise. You've got to understand this. You never tell anyone what you're doing in that realm. I can tell you stories about a guy, and let me tell you the story because it'll illustrate a point. Years ago, a local group of New Agers moved into Montana, Church Universal Triumphant, and they bought a lot of land. They were building bomb shelters. By the way, some of those people are some of the most fantastic people I've ever met in my life. I disagree with them. They disagree with me, but they're fabulous, fabulous, fabulous people. Literally, when I say that, some of the most honest and wonderful people I've ever met. But listen, one of the guys, I said to him, and I'm making his name up, John, I said, John, never tell anyone what you're doing in metals. So this guy hired, he bought a safe, and he tried to hire some kind of, let's just say there's some unusual people, and they ended up ripping off his metals because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, the deal is that people have got to keep their mouth shut. And I encourage all of you listening, it's time to be quiet. It's time to, in that realm, go mute. So I just bring these stories up to ask you to really keep Charmaine in prayer that she'll get her medals back. Now, let me go here. Olds model, Chuck, said this. Okay, that's it, Chuck. Thanks. That's one. You are talking about an Olds 442 W30 455 CID factory blueprinted mill. I'll tell you what, that is exactly it, and thanks for telling me that. By the way, I want to make something Kitco, the company that I feed to my website and others use to feed to their website, they had a glitch today where they showed silver at $4.67. It was not a real price or not a real quote. That's called a glitch quote, and I don't know if it's prophetic. I hope not. But the point is that at the same time Kitco was showing $4.67 on silver, everybody else in the world was showing $5.87. And I got to share something with you. He said, Kim has asked me, do I have any comments? Yeah, look, I see that all the time. I've actually seen platinum show up $1,800, or whatever. So you've got to be careful on the quotes. If there's ever something that's that extreme, double verify, because that's what happened today on Kitco. And I got to tell you, again, it was linked to my site, and so I can only tell you that I get the feed from them, but it never got that low. And if you go to what Laura Mansfield has stated, and God bless her for all of her work, she intercepted and actually read and translated the Voice of Jihad, and it's talking about they want to take silver down to $5, gold probably $3.75, and then it will rubber band up so quickly and so fast that people will have whiplash. Most people don't understand that the oil billionaires of the Middle East, when you pull them all together, you're not talking billions, you're talking trillions. So everyone, they have the ability to do what they're doing right now, which is manipulating the prices dramatically. Let's see what Dr. Brian says. He says, Steve, the fuel, and he's in Texas, is expected to go to $2.08 for gasoline, $1.98 for diesel in South Texas this week. Also, food prices here in South Texas have also increased so much that it's raised as much as 15% in a week. That is for certain on mainstay items, cereal, flour, things like that. It's amazing. And Brian, after the show, I'll send you a link to the giant dome tent. Let's go to this question, Nancy. Nope, that wasn't it. Chuck was right. She said a Hearst Olds 442 with a dual gate shifter. Okay, let's go to Robert. He said this. Fascinating, huh? Kind of a synchronicity. He said, Steve, my wife and I just saw Logan's Run within the last 30 days, and another very telling sci-fi classic. Hearing of the idea to start chipping the homeless reminded me of the human experimentation that took place on the homeless in Tom Clancy's book, Rainbow Six. You are right, as in the book, who would miss them? Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, what scares me the most, and I don't even want to go here right now, but I can tell you this, that the horrific nature, and I don't want to scare anybody with this, and I'm not trying to, but the horrific nature of the ghoulish realm of the supernatural has always feasted on the carcasses of humanity that's not understood the spiritual nature of the battle. And what I'm saying to you is this, is that, and look, whether you believe in aliens or you don't, I can only tell you that I find it fascinating that where there has been incredible occult fascination with devil worship and with spirits and evil spirits and the presence of cannibalism, I once was going to write a book on the history of cannibalism. Nobody ever did it like I would do it, and then I came to this conclusion, I'm not going to waste my time on it. I deal enough with it and the giants, and isn't it interesting that all of the giant poems and the little stories that kids grow up with, they'll grind, I'll grind your bones to make my bread, Jack the Giant Killer, Jack and the Beanstalk. And again, the point that I'm trying to make here is that there's something very sinister beyond the homeless. Now, keep in mind, I'm predicting that we're going to have, and I'm just going to stand by my prediction, we're going to go in this country from 1 month and within a 30-day period when everything starts to break loose and crash, I'm predicting we're going to have an instant 20 million new homeless people. Now, you say, well, how can that be, Steve? You're nuts. Maybe you're the one that's having too much hallucinogens. No, listen to me. With the adjustable rate mortgages and the percentage of adjustable rate mortgages that people now possess, it's fascinating to me that most people would be 30, maybe 60 days away. But again, in a crisis situation, people will be forced for whatever reason, whether it's economic, whether it's weather, whether it's water, earthquake, whatever the cause is, they'll be forced into the homeless. So when you think about the poor homeless people, remember, outside of the grace of God, that could be us. And you know, a fascinating promise that I've always camped out on in the Word of God is where King David has said, I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. You know, again, over the years, I've been told that, you know, Steve, if you just cut the Jesus stuff out, you'd have a lot more listeners. And I was offered mainstream, ladies and gentlemen. I can't tell you how many times. I said, you know what? Then I'd just be one of them. And I said, I don't want to do it. I just want to stay where God places me. And for those of you that have had ears and I've been a blessing to, then all I can say is praise the living God. For those of you that have been, let's just say this, resisting the holy God of Israel and resisting the pulling on your heart, I really think it's time for you to consider, look, maybe 10 years ago what we're seeing now you thought was fiction. Right now it's fact. And this very idea that they're going to track the homeless, think about it, ponder it, say, what do they do? Oh, and everybody says, oh, they're a nuisance, okay? But yeah, but why would you want to track them then? If they're insignificant, you just basically move them out, head them out, move them in, you know? Just kind of like the old rawhide theme. But there's something more to this, and I don't claim to have it all. That's not what I'm saying, is an understanding. But I can tell you this, there's way more to it than a trial run for all of us, because this enables them to pretty much act without any type of ability or accountability, and that's what's important. Here's what, who says this? I think it's Tom. He said, Steve, what better group of people to do experimental new technologies on than the homeless? Not only will no one miss them when they disappear, but no one would believe them in the first place if they were to say they were implanted. Plus, in the economy, where is about to go into the tank, they would have an almost unlimited supply of test subjects to choose from. Dr. Frankenstein would never have it any better than he would then, or to be used as they see fit to be used. Just use your imagination; you'll more than likely be right. The human capacity for evil knows no bounds now. And as we all know, that if we are hungry, we'll do almost anything to eat or be eaten. Take care. Again, maybe I'm not so far off on the Soylent Green thing. This is somebody sending me, Steve, where did you find the article on the RFID chip need to download to share with others? Thanks, Kathy in New York. She said now gas in our small town in New York has gone to $1.87, I guess. Thank you. That article will be posted on my website. I've already emailed it out to my webmaster. And she's been having a hard time with their internet today in Colorado, so it'll get up. Here's what Lee said. Let's see. Yep. Let's see. That's just more of this, another issue on the Kitco thing. Homeless, still here. Steve, is it possible to use the homeless as human guinea pigs to track forms of bio or other engineered diseases? Please comment. Absolutely. This is from EJ, and EJ, you're right on. Here's the deal. It's going to have to happen in more of a urban setting, and most of the testing that's gone to date has been in the jungles of Africa. And whether you want to admit it or not, you must understand that Africa has been the world's test tube for experimenting on people that the rest of the world didn't care about. And if you don't think genocide is in the future, look at Rwanda and Burundi, everyone. Those worthless creatures that the United Nothing, which is the United Nations, sat by while 2 million people were slaughtered. Of course they sat by when, about the same amount were slaughtered in Cambodia by Pol Pot. And by the way, come to think of it, the rest of the world just sits by when slaughters take place. So, if you've got to recognize, as you come to recognize that this is way more sinister than any of us even know at this point, okay? So Sharon says, Randy, my friend in hardware is having a big run on fencing materials because they've been advised the price of iron is about to make a big jump upward. Can you really tell me, you guys, that you can't see that silver and gold and platinum and palladium are manipulated with lumber, okay? OSB board's gone from $4.95 a year ago, a sheet, 4x8 sheet, to $30. Can you not tell me that the price of this stuff is being manipulated when steel has gone, 5 times, lead gone 5 times? And by the way, I am going to start putting the price of lead, I think. I'm going to get a quote from lead from one of the people that quoted daily, and you're going to be amazed. And again, I'm telling you point blank that all the wise guys, the guys with the bumper stickers and the how do I say this, the lack of intelligence to deal with the ramifications of some of their bumper stickers on their car. I can remember people telling me, oh, they'll never raise the price of lead. There's a lot of it out there. Wrong. 1.3 billion Chinese. You figure out if you make them 100 rounds of ammo for their SKSs, do you figure out how much lead that is? Ladies and gentlemen, whether you want to admit it or not, the weapons of war are being built at an unheralded pace. And we're now at a position and a time and space where anything, anywhere, anytime goes. Don't let the metals flip you out. I can tell you point blank, they're going to rebound with vengeance. But everybody wants to buy them at the ultimate low. The powers that be are going to take them there only for a short time. Good night. Thank you for tuning in to the Q-Files. Slaughters take place. So if you've got to recognize, or as you come to recognize that this is way more sinister than any of us even know at this point. Okay, Sue Sharon says, Randy, my friend in hardware is having a big run on fencing materials because they've been advised the price of iron is about to make a big jump upward. Can you really tell me, you guys, that you can't see that silver and gold and platinum and palladium are manipulated with lumber, okay? OSB board's gone from $4.95 a year ago, a sheet, 4x8 sheet, to $30. Can you not tell me that the price of this stuff is being manipulated when steel has gone, 5 times, lead gone 5 times? And by the way, I am going to start putting the price of lead, I think. I'm going to get a quote from lead from one of the people that quoted daily, and you're going to be amazed. And again, I'm telling you point blank that all the wise guys, the guys with the bumper stickers and the how do I say this, the lack of intelligence to deal with the ramifications of some of their bumper stickers on their car. I can remember people telling me, oh, they'll never raise the price of lead. There's a lot of it out there. Wrong. 1.3 billion Chinese. You figure out if you make them 100 rounds of ammo for their SKSs, do you figure out how much lead that is? Ladies and gentlemen, whether you want to admit it or not, the weapons of war are being built at an unheralded pace. And we're now at a position and a time and space where anything, anywhere, anytime goes. Don't let the metals flip you out. I can tell you point blank, they're going to rebound with vengeance. But everybody wants to buy them at the ultimate low. The powers that be are going to take them there only for a short time. Good night. Thank you for tuning in to the Q-Files.